We're about to start episode 9 of the building of the Dancing Feather Boston pilot schooner. And what I would expect we're going to probably address is maybe cutting in the hawse holes at the stem and gluing in the lips that go on the outside the hawse. And we'll start to look at the deck furniture, the wheelhouse, the cabins and whatnot, and try to decide whether we're going to use exactly what's on the A.J. Fisher plans, or whether we're going to try to do something that may be more correct to the model. There's some thought that the Fisher plans show the deck configuration more as a fishing boat than a pilot schooner. But there are no photographs or documentation of the actual ship, so it leaves it kind of open for conjecture. So this is an opportunity for me to pretty much do what I want, I think, on the deck, so we'll see how that goes. I purchased these two little castings from A.J. Fisher, and these are the lips for the hawse hole where the anchor chain would come up through. And I've cleaned them up a little bit with a file, and there'll be a little more cleaning to do yet. These will be painted red and attached to the bow. And I'm getting ready now to drill the hole for the hawse. And set this up here. I've put a 1/16 of an inch drill into the collet, and I've center punched the hole where I want it. So now we're going to drill it, and it wants to go in at an angle because the chain would not go in this way, it would go more towards the stern, so it wants to be angled towards the stern. Now that was a 1/16 diameter hole. The internal hole in the hawse lips that I showed you, the castings, is actually 3/32. So we're now going to open that hole up to 3/32. The 3/32 drill was just large enough that I had to change the collet out to get it to fit. But we can now enlarge it to its full size. So now we have the hawse hole bored in. We'll be doing the same thing on the other side. We'll be painting the hawse lips and gluing them in place with the red hawse lips. All right, I've stirred up a little of primary red paint, and I got a fine brush. We're going to see if we can paint the hawse pipe lips. I think that'll do. We'll let those dry and then we'll glue them in place. I have one of my friends was kind enough to loan me this article from the National Research Guild, and there's an article in here on dancing feather, and Rob Napier we're lucky enough to have as a member of our club, the Merrimack Valley Ship Model Club, built not one but 3 models of dancing feather in 3 different modes. So there's an article here called Not Quite Triplets, Rod's Quest for Dancing Feather. And he's got some great photographs. This is a photograph of a half hull. And then he's got some really nice details of the dancing feather and some line drawings. But basically, Rob is saying, which is the way he built the first one, pretty much like the A.J. Fisher kit, is that in his opinion, the deck was set up as a fishing boat more than as a pilot schooner. And she set up with a ship's wheel in a little wheelhouse in the cabins and whatnot. And you'll see in Rob's third model, which he felt was more like a pilot schooner, he's gone from a wheel to a tiller on it, which I think I'm going to stay with the wheel because I think it's prettier actually to have a wood wheel on it. And here's some more detail of the bow where we've been working. His second model he rigged with sails and added that realism to it. I'm not sure where the number 3 comes from. I haven't seen that before. And then this is his third model, in which, I don't know if you can see it or not, but we have a tiller on it now. And more importantly, the tiller, he's gone to a round cockpit that goes into the cabin. And I know for sure I'm not going to cut my deck open and sink a cockpit into it at this point. But I will take a look at the rest of the layout that he has of what he felt was more in a tune for a fishing schooner. Here's Rob photographing his model. So anyhow, a lot of information in the article that I'm going to glean some information out of, and we'll move forward with this. Having shown you the article on dancing feather, the 3 models that Rob Napier built, Rob is not only just a knowledgeable guy, but he's, unlike most of us, he's actually a professional ship modeler, and some of the work he does is restoration of models for private parties and museums. And he's just recently released this book called Caring for Ship Models, and by Rob Napier. And it's a wonderful book, actually. It's got a lot of illustrations and information about restoring ship models and cleaning them up and fixing them, and things that you might want to be thinking about as you build a model so that it survives better over time. This is not Rob's only book that he's put out, but it's certainly very well written, and I recommend it. All right, the hawse lips are now glued in place on both sides. So, gotta figure out what to tackle next. The next thing I'll tackle will be the anchor winch and bits at the end of the bowsprit. This one has the two bits with the pin rail in between, and then some handles and the winch drums strapped to them. And I'm trying to get some better idea of what Rob was doing here, because he did something different, and I can't really make out what's going on. There's something going on here that looks like it might be a winch. I don't think she would have had I know she wouldn't have had an electric winch on her in 1853, so whatever it would have been manual. So I guess I'm going to go with this approach, or something similar to this approach. I've cut two 1/8 inch bits, and I'm about to cut the slot for the pin shelf. So we'll go across both pieces at the same time. All right, now we'll take a small chisel and remove that. That should get us close enough, then we should be able to file it if we need to open it up a little bit more. Just glued the two vertical bits in place. They're chamfered at the top, and they've been cut for a shelf, pin shelf. And I've drilled the holes for 2 pins. And this will also become the upright for the winch. I've installed 2 belaying pins into it. I had to cut the pins down because they run into the top of the bowsprit, so not as nice as it should be, but not too bad. Just put a little bit of white bond poly onto the cherry wood here, and it brings out the color rather nicely on the cherry wood. So next we're going to have to figure out how to attach the winch to it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to try and do is to make the shaft with the 2 pulleys on it, the cranks. I found a piece of, I have this old stash of wires and tubes that I keep in a box here. And in there I found a nice piece of aluminum wire. And that'll be easy to bend. So we'll be able to make something out of that. So I took a dowel and I chucked it up in the lathe, and I'm just now cutting off the first one. Those will be the pulleys. I've already drilled a hole in the end of it. So here's the first pulley. It fits nice and snug on the wire. So now we just got to make the second one. Okay, I've managed to fashion some kind of a winch here. Got some black paper that I put on for straps on the backside. So doesn't look too unreasonable compared to what they're showing in the plans here. So now we have a winch. I've cut a 1/4 inch dowel to the proper length for the main mast. The main mast being here on the drawing. And we have to shape the mast square up at the top here where it's going to fit together with the top mast. And to keep everything in the right direction, I've got a notch on the bottom of the main mast where it fits into the frames below decks. So if I keep this piece vertical, then I know my cut here is going to be 90 degrees to the notch that's on the frame. So that will orient the mast, keep it from twisting one side or the other. The end of the top of the mast, so we'll be able to build the collars that go over that. Next, I think I'll make up a couple of pin rails. This one has 5 pins in it. I've cut a couple of pieces of cherry wood, and we're going to start shaping those. I've rounded off the corners of the pin rail, and then we've trial fit one in place here, and that looks like about a good working width for it. So next we need to mark off the pins and drill them out. What I've done is mark off with a center punch the outer pins, and I want 5 of them, so that leaves 4 spaces in between the pins. So I'm going to use the proportional divider. If I back this out a little bit, you'll be able to see it better. Which looks like this. And we're going to set it to 4 on the scale. So we slide the block up till it lines up with the number 4. So now, when I open up the divider, the distance here is 1/4 the distance here. So if we take the dividers, put them in our 2 outer holes, like so, turn it over, use the dividers as a center punch. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now I've got, zoom in a little bit, I've got center punches for 5 pins. Okay, I've drilled out the pin rail with 5 holes, nice and evenly marked, and I've tried in a pin, and that all looks like it's going to work out pretty well. Okay, we've got 2 pin rails installed. I've got pins populating the one on the port side. We're about to put some pins in on the starboard side. There's another bank, the same as that go in front of the main mast, or behind the main mast. I've been working on the pin rails, and we've made the sheet horse here out of wire with a ring on it, and another sheet horse in front of the mainsail, and a couple of small pin rails to go in front of the masts, and another set of pin rails aft. So you have pin rails on the foremast and the mainmast on both sides, and then in front of the mast as well. It's starting to look pretty nice. I just cut a couple of pieces of brass tubing here and here and put them into the deck. Those will be the openings where the anchor chains will drop down into the chain locker. So the anchor chains will come up through the hawse hole, over the winch, and down into the chain locker. I've begun working on the deck houses. the steering box, the hatch. This could be the hatch down into the cabin, and this will be another forward hatch into below decks. And I've given it one coat of the white bond poly, and I have not painted the sides yet. The sides are going to be painted the same color as the rails. And I've been saving this really gorgeous piece of black walnut to use as a base, and I just gave it a coat of Captain's varnish, Pettit's Captain's varnish. This will be the first of many coats before we get it exactly the way we want it. So this will be sanded down and coated and sanded down. So I drilled the holes in for the pedestals, which are sitting over here. And they're the 3 9/16 on center. That'll put the water line level. So we've got that going. I've been working on the deck houses. Still got some more to do on the companionway for the house and the forward companionway. I did fit the pedestals to the keel, and it came with number 8 screws, and I went to the local hardware store and downsized to number 6 screws, because I was afraid that these large screws would break the sides out of the keel, and I think the 6 screws are going to be fine. In the meantime, this is the second coat. I think you can see the porosity that's still showing in the varnish on the base, and it's going to need to be sanded out a few more times and more coats of varnish until all that goes away. It is very pretty wood though. And next I'm going to be doing a dry fit. The holes are drilled for the pedestals, and we'll fit up the pedestal before I give it the next coat for dry fit, make sure everything lines up properly. I've had to notch the keel to accept the pedestals because it was just a little bit wider than the opening in the top of the pedestal. So these now fit, so we're going to do a dry, like I said, we're going to do a dry fit onto the stand. Looks like we got the water line nice and horizontal. And now to check it in the other direction. It looks like the stern post is sitting pretty much vertical, which is what we want. So I'd say our dry fit looks pretty good. I've just sanded out the second coat of varnish, and you can see where the shiny low spots are now. But we're going to have to keep adding coats of varnish until we fill all that in, and that should make a beautiful piece of walnut. Applied the third coat of varnish on the base, and it's got a little dust in it, but it doesn't matter because it's all going to get sanded out again before we put the fourth coat on. I've glued down the house and the forward companionway. I'm still waiting to glue the wheel box down because I've ordered a ship's wheel, and I've ordered a couple of anchors, and I've ordered a bunch of blocks that I can start with rigging. So until that stuff comes, this is about as far as I'm going to go for now, so it's a good place to end part 9. I have started a little bit of work on the masts, and we put in where the booms will sit, and I've made a couple of collars here to go around the bottom of the mast. So that's where the project is at the moment.